I was doing the same kind of very desperate job search. I need to do this for my mental and physical well-being. The stress that comes from being somewhere that you don't want to be, it was really, really bad. That sent me to the emergency room, and turned out I had high blood pressure, and I ended up having to be on medication, which, all new. I hadn't hit 50 yet, and so I thought, this is not me, this is not my life, but it was.
Welcome to The Defense Never Rests with Morgan Akins, your monthly dose of uncommon sense about all things legal and some that are not.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Defense Never Rests. I am your host, and I'm joined again today by Robin. Hi, Robin.
Hey, Megan. How are you?
Good. So, the first time didn't scare you away. You're like, I'll come back again for another podcast. So welcome. I'm so glad.
Definitely interesting.
Yes. And hopefully we'll be seeing your face on more to come.
We'll see. I'll keep you in suspense.
No promises here. Well,
okay.
Today we're joined by Helen Yoon. Helen was on the podcast a while ago, I think almost like a year ago, and she, has since she was at assistant general counsel at one company and transitioned to a new position at another company. And I just love talking to her so much. We talked so much last time. We talked so much about the struggles that, we as women and lawyers and professionals go through, with the tug of war between home and work and trying to be the best at all the things and kind of, not failing at all of them, but you can't be the best at everything. And we had such a great conversation that time. And then when I saw that she transitioned to this new position, I was like, you know what, why don't you come back on and let's go back into that conversation and talk about where you are. So with that, let's bring her in. Good afternoon, Helen. Welcome to the Defense Never Rests again. How are you today?
Hi, thanks for having me. Doing great.
Well, awesome. We were just chatting before we started recording about, I was complimenting you on your beautiful yellow door behind you, which I'm just like, I'm really loving the yellow and blue white contrast. And then like that splash of pink. I think it just looks, I'm a big fan of your interior design choices.
Thank you. I think this will dovetail into some of what we're going to talk about later, but this is my home office. I work hybrid. I work from home most of the time. Then I will go into the office. But when I moved into my new role, I wanted to have a fresh start and fresh home office. And, I wanted something bright and happy. And so these are the two colors that I picked. And everybody loves my yellow door. So that makes me happy. It's bright, so.
I actually, this is totally like we're veering off away, taking a hard left right now. But out of curiosity, because we just put in black doors in our house, did you have that manufacturer like painted at the manufacturer, or did you do it yourself?
Oh, my husband and I did my office just ourselves. So if you look real close, you can kind of see, because it was not a white door, it was, wood flavor. And so it's not perfect, but it'll do. So, yeah.
Hey, from my vantage point, it looks pretty perfect. So
you can't tell on the screen.
Yeah. I'm going to go with it. Yeah.
Well, Helen, for our listeners out there, you've been on the podcast before, but I want to talk about your background a little bit in case, our listeners out there didn't catch your prior time with us, and just your background is really, really interesting because you took the course that well, first of all, I know we talked about this previously, but, what brought you to law school? Like, was it something that, you had a plan to do, or you, like a lot of us, just kind of ended up there because you had no idea what to do with your life?
Well, kind of some of that. I think I was very interested in, becoming a lawyer when I was young in high school. And then somewhere along the way, right before college started, someone had convinced me how wonderful it is to be an accountant. And I don't enjoy math. Maybe that's why I eventually did become a lawyer. But so I started college in the business school. I was miserable. I hated it. And so I went into the liberal arts school. Anyway, after college, I had two routes I was looking to go into, which was academia, and trying to get my doctorate in history and teaching. And that just seemed like a really long time. It was like a really long struggle. And I really needed to be in a career making money right away. So I thought, ended up talking to a friend of my father's who was an attorney, and he said, I thought you wanted to be a lawyer when you were a kid. And I said, well, I did. And he said, well, you still can. And so I thought, okay, well, 3 years, I can do 3 years. And that's how I ended up in law. And I remembered that that's something that I really always wanted to do, but I kind of forgot about along the way.
Yeah.
I haven't had a traditional kind of career. I don't remember if we talked about it last time, but I didn't go into private practice and then kind of move into in-house. I kind of went straight into in-house, which it wasn't that common back in the day. So a little bit non-traditional route for me.
And how was it that you were able to go in-house right out of law school? Because that is not common. I think partly because you come out of law school and you don't really know how to be a lawyer. Like you don't really know how to do it yet. They don't teach you that in law school.
Well, so I had a little speed bump along the way. So right after law school, I had a fellowship to do health law policy at the state senate. And I thought I'm going to do health law, and that's what I want to do, help write legislation and all of that stuff. And I started the program, and about 3 months into the program, I realized that the program was not mature enough at this point. I just finished law school. I just had taken the bar, and I was ready to do really substantive work and be in the Senate and go to committee meetings and all these things, and it just wasn't happening. And I felt like I really was losing a lot of valuable time, kind of sitting around. And so I decided I need to leave this program if it's not going to be what was promised. And that's what I ended up doing. And so that was health law. And I moved back home to Houston, and this was at the height of Enron. If you all remember Enron. So it was, I live in Houston, it's energy, it's all big energy, no. And so I decided to start looking in that industry. And I think I dodged the bullet. Yeah, I know I dodged the bullet because I was trying to get an interview there, not knowing anything, right? Like, whatever. So of course I didn't get an interview. Great. And maybe a year after that is when all the stuff happened. So thank goodness. But I think I got lucky because I had a friend from law school whose husband was working in electric energy at the time. And the GC of the company, he, had a very junior lawyer working for him before me. And she had left, and she'd moved on. And so he was looking for another junior lawyer. And at that time, he was taking a big risk because I literally knew nothing. But it was a great experience for me because he allowed me to really explore and try to learn a lot of things on my own and kind of at my pace. So, it was really nice. And then he would swoop in and we kind of, look over the work and all of that stuff. But a lot of it was self-driven. He would say, hey, take this contract, or hey, look into this regulation, and then let me go. And so that's how I started in my in-house career, or my entire legal career.
Yeah. And, do you still keep in touch, or is that person that you work for, are they still around?
Yes, we're friends. I mean, we've kept
Yeah.
in touch all these years. I was at that company for close to 5 years. And we've kept in touch. So, over 20 years.
That's great. I love hearing that sort of thing, because you did take like a not traditional path, but not a typical path, just because most people straight out of law school don't have that opportunity to go in-house, and
Yeah.
especially don't have someone who's willing to kind of mentor them and like give them the space to learn. And that's certainly not how it really works at law firms. At least that was not my experience. Like you gotta do it, and like then you have to quickly learn how to be efficient. So it's it's a nice that you had that ability to kind of take your time and dig in, and really be able to understand the industry that you were working in, and like how to do your job.
Yeah, it was so invaluable. I mean, I was not making anywhere near what my friends from law school, that went big law were making, but that was okay with me. I mean, even in law school, I was looking for more non-traditional routes, and that's kind of why I veered towards the policy and all of that. But I got to learn a lot of things about not just being a lawyer in this industry, but the industry just so I worked for an electric company. So I got to go ride in the trucks with the guys that work on the poles and learn about, how it works, and just from the ground up. And I don't think a lot of folks get that early on in their career. So, I mean, anytime you change industries, I think you have to do that, right? You have to go on the trucks, or you have to go to the manufacturing sites or the factories or wherever it is that your employer or your company, works, and learn it. But I got to do that as a baby lawyer. So that was pretty cool.
So let me ask you this though, you're in this energy industry. It is a male dominated industry. So what was and you're young too. So, and you're Asian. So what was your experience, early on, kind of being like thrown into that world,
Yeah.
were people welcoming, or did you get a mix of, mix of experiences?
It was a wonderful experience. Everyone was very welcoming. Yeah, I think some people were maybe perplexed by me because I didn't start, and I give so many kudos to my GC, because he had me working out of our largest field office, not the corporate office. And so I got to be around all those folks that are out there every day on the trucks, and I got to know them and see what's happening firsthand. I didn't ever feel kind of out of place at all. And it was not in like the metropolis of Houston. It was on the outskirts of it as well. So one, not a lot of Asians. And then you're right, it's a male dominated industry. So not a lot of women, and not a lot of women at a certain level. A lot of them were in administrative roles. So it was new, but it was great. I never felt like, oh, I don't want to be here.
And that's actually, I'm happy to hear that, but I am also surprised, because I didn't expect that to be your experience.
Really? Well, what were you expecting?
Oh, I expected more of a kind of like, I found this like as a young attorney, when you would go to inspections for, fire cases or construction cases, and you're the only female attorney there, I would get some like gruffness from everyone else, or I would definitely felt like much of an outsider. I was, I had to kind of push my way into conversations. Otherwise I wasn't going to be part of them. So I, at least in my own experience, I felt like I had to push a little bit harder. Robin, you're nodding your head like you had the similar experience.
Oh, definitely. And being asked if you were the court reporter at every deposition because, you couldn't be the attorney taking the deposition. I agree.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that was my GC setting the tone at the top and setting the tone with the leadership at that location that, hey, she's an attorney, she's on my team, she's really part of the management of this location and everything else. So, and that's not to say I didn't run into any kind of bias or discrimination. I had folks, men, kind of, do the whole, can you go make this copy for me?
Mm-hmm.
And no, I can't, because I'm here for a purpose as well. So it happened a couple of times, but not enough for me to say, wow, this is really terrible. I think I got a lot more respect than maybe I had earned at that point.
Or maybe you commanded the respect, and also sounds like you had good management at a higher level that paved good groundwork for you.
Yes, I think that's so important because the attitude from the top down, right?
Yes.
Like if there isn't that respect at that level. So it was mostly a good experience.
Yeah, I mean it can't all be rainbows and gumdrops.
Yeah.
Like there always is some negative with the good.
Yeah, and I think you're if you're authentic and you meet people where they are and they understand, like I wasn't trying to be the pretentious young, I'm a lawyer, Star Jones kind of thing. I was there as part of the team, and I was very honest about not knowing anything and trying to learn. And I think people appreciate that when, they see you making an effort to learn. Not just, my role as a lawyer, but just the entire business and, treating everyone the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
So, maybe that was it. I don't know.
So you stayed in, the private sector for some time, but then you eventually went went into private practice. So what prompted, that change? Because I mean, in the eyes of people like for me and Robin, who are in, private practice, once you get out into the non-billable world, why would you come back? Or why would you join it?
Well, yes, good question. The simple answer is it was 2009. And my job was eliminated, and I needed to make some money, and so I just put out a shingle and took whatever work that I could find. And so, if you see my resume, I end up back in-house, kind of after things started, dying down a little bit. But that was rough. 2009 was really rough, trying to find jobs. And I, even as a lawyer with, nearly 10 years of experience, and then seeing, first year associates or kids coming out of law school and not being able to find anything, that was a really terrible time. So that's really the biggest reason. It wasn't by choice.
Yeah, I mean, that is when I graduated, and I had in law school, I had different plans, like plans to go. I think my plan was to go into real estate, do real estate transactions, and that was clearly not an area that was open for business.
So real estate, practices were being disappeared out of firms at that point.
Yeah, not a good time to want to do that. So I had to pivot. And I thought that is life, that's what you need to do. And here I am in litigation because of that at that time, and I'm sure we're going to see some similar, effects to that, in years to come after like where we are right now and all the changes in, the market. Like I think there's going to be a similar kind of shift as well.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I'm curious about, what's going to happen in 5, 10 years
Mhm.
after all of this. Something I've been looking at just today or thinking about, like the Great Resignation and all of that, how it's going to shake out.
Yeah. So speaking of the Great Resignation, great transition, Helen. So you were at Brinks for almost 10 years. That's when we had you last on the podcast, and you had been in that role and for a very long time. And and now you're at Integer Holdings. Was the Great Resignation, was that part of your pivot move, or did something just happen more organically than that?
I think it was just the perfect storm of things. So like many companies, my company at the time, we had lots of leadership changes, we had job eliminations, all those terrible things that were happening, right around the beginning of the pandemic when people weren't sure what was going to happen and all of this. And so what had been a very stable in terms of leadership company, my GC had been there like 39 years.
Oh, wow.
And so, that changed, that leadership changed. And so that changed kind of where my position was on the team. And, I'm sure this is not the first time you've heard this story as women lawyers. But while I had been on the succession plan, I was told pretty quickly after he was let go or he retired, that I was not going to be considered to fill that space. The reasons that were given to me weren't not acceptable to me. And so I realized there's really nowhere else for me to go here. And then, someone new was brought in. And then I thought, okay, well, it could still be good because maybe under this new leader, I can learn other skills that I don't have that I've been wanting to learn, or maybe I can take on different roles in the team. And, so I did have high expectations, or I had hopes, that it could be fine. And, a year and a half later, I had left because it wasn't fine, and I became very miserable. So, yeah. I mean, to be honest and frank about it, I just was very unhappy. And a big part of it was the culture change on our team. Our prior GC had was a really wonderful, inclusive, like family team environment, and it was very different after that. So, I wasn't the first to leave, actually, and I started looking while trying to make the best of it and hoping that things could get better, and it just never did. So
good for you though, for kind of assessing the situation and knowing like, look, I need to be proactive in doing something about this rather than, waiting my time out and leaving it up to chance, because you certainly don't want to end up in a situation that you don't have any job, so
yeah.
One thing I was wondering, when they replaced your GC, was it an internal move or did they pull someone from outside?
Well, and that was another part of it, they brought someone in from outside.
Yeah.
And there were two of us on the succession plan. And neither of us were going to be considered. So that was kind of the beginning of big culture changes. And to me, I can't, if you think about it, like, you never know what's going to happen. You could have a terrible boss, you could have whatever, and then a year later, it could be very different because all that changes and whatever. I'm just not patient enough for that. Like you were saying, like I feel like I can't wait for things to be presented to me or possibly presented to me. I have to go out and try to make it happen. So that's what I ended up doing is I started looking, and it was rough. It was 18 months almost of looking, and lots of interviews with wonderful places and companies. It's just, I always say this, it's like when you find your mate, it's like timing and everything has to be just right. And that's how I ended up at Integral.
So before we talk about your current role, I am curious about, I just do want to talk a little bit about the job seeking process, because this is something that comes up quite a bit when I talk to people at how awful the job seeking process is for that reason. Like, thankfully we're in a position. So you weren't in a position that you didn't have a job and you were just like really looking. I mean, you're still really looking, but like you already have an income stream coming in. But from talking to people, the process can be so hard on you mentally, because you get excited about a role and a company and a team, and you have a meeting and it could be great. And you've already planned things out in your head, and then sometimes you don't hear anything more, or they opt to go in another direction. So, how did you manage those highs and the lows that, you were experiencing during that 18 months?
I mentioned 2009 earlier, and I was doing the same kind of very desperate job search, which was, in 2009, it was, I need to make a living. This time it was, I need to do this for my mental and physical well-being, because, the stress that comes from being somewhere that you don't want to be, it was really, really bad. That sent me to the emergency room, and turned out I had high blood pressure, and I ended up having to be on medication, which, all new, I hadn't hit 50 yet. And so I thought, this is not me, this is not my life, but it was. And I decided I have to do this just because my physical well-being is the most important, and my mental. So, but going back to the job hunt thing, I just think back to the 2009 and this recent one, and the job hunt search is just as bad now as it was then, because the highs and lows are the same. I feel like now, though, it's even harder, I think, to get your foot in the door if you don't have a connection. Because, you have to apply to these jobs online. A lot of times, they use the algorithms to kind of, pick out the resumes. And if you don't have the buzzwords, then you're not even going to get, a call from the recruiter and all that stuff. And so I went for everything, like the ones where they just saw it on job board and I'm going to apply. And, through people that I know and networking, I tried all the things. And I just, yes, it's just lows and highs all the time. And interviewing is exhausting.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, like, how can we tell companies to do it better, right? Like, all those tips, like, don't ghost someone, tell
Right.
them that you're one of the finalists, and we're going to be making a decision in the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks goes by, nothing. And then 3 weeks goes by, and then, oh, by the way, we decided we're going to outsource that. Like,
Yeah.
how does that happen in the course of, 2 to 4 weeks? I think they can do it better. That's not my field. I know wonderful recruiters and people that are in-house recruiters and all of those things. And I know that there's a lot of restraints and constraints when it comes to hiring, because what might be totally open and available and, there's a requisite for it might not be available just due to, financial and budgetary concerns. It might change.
Yeah.
So I just think, it's always communication. Like, if you know that this is not, you're not going to hire for this position after, 2 or 3 rounds of interviews, just let people know so they're not waiting.
Right.
Just let them know that, hey, I don't think we're going to hire for this at all, or whatever. Or if you're just not it, tell them, right? Okay.
Yeah.
If it's not going to be a good fit.
So, and when, throughout this search, though, did you have in mind like your ideal position?
Yes.
And were, what sort of criteria did you have that you were looking for?
Culture. I was really going to try to investigate and ask those questions of everyone that I had an opportunity to speak with about that company's culture. That was primary for me just because of the situation that I was in. So culture was a big one. And then the second one was, I've been in that industry for 10 years. I was ready to learn and do something new. Everything is technology related now. And so that's kind of what I was looking for, is someplace that's kind of doing novel things, new things. And that's why I was really interested in a lot of little startups, because they're out there and they're giving it a shot. And I thought that would be exciting. Maybe not as stable, but sure as heck would be exciting and be learning something new. So really those were my two big things. Oh, and then the other one was proximity and whether it could be remote, if it's not, I mean, I'm not in a position to relocate. So it had to either be remote or hybrid, or I live close by. So those were the three important things.
So an Integer is, from what I understand, it's like a medical device manufacturing company, but it's also publicly held. Was Brinks publicly held, or was that privately held?
Yes, it's publicly held.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that wasn't a transition for you, like, because I imagine that's a little bit different to go from a privately held to a publicly held company. But, you're kind of expanded, like, you're making another pivot. Like, you have this background in energy, and Brinks is definitely not was not an energy company. And now you've gone to medical devices, which, it's definitely a change. So what appealed to you about it?
The technology part really did.
Yeah.
Because our company has 3 main categories of products, and I support one of those 3 main categories. And the category that I support, I think they do a lot more of the kind of new, novel things. And so that was really interesting to me. And then, going back to culture, because what we make touches people's lives, in a very fundamental way, that caring about people is part of the culture.
Yeah.
Because we care about the patients that receive our products. they're many times implanted inside your body. So it's not like just a drug. I mean, it's like a big deal. So
Yeah.
that's one of our core values. And the other thing was one of our core values is candor and transparency. And that was something I really was,
Yeah.
I said, that has to be at the top of the list for me, because of what I felt like,
Yeah.
was what I was going through and I wasn't getting
Yeah.
before.
In your,
Can I answer your question? I'm sorry. Did I answer the question?
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you
All right.
answered it on many fold. We're good.
I think so.
Okay.
It's not a deposition here, Helen.
All right. All right. If it
Uh,
were, I would shut my mouth. So, okay.
yeah. You,
Only
no,
speaking
and
spoken to.
if you're in deposition, you would just say yes
Right.
Oh,
or no,
Right.
or I don't recall.
it depends.
So one thing that, we had talked a lot about in our last podcast, though, was, the struggles that we as women and mothers have, in both the private and public sector, and just like the balance that we have. And I mean, you even touched on, even in your prior role, you were having, it was hard for you to balance things. It is where you're at now. Are you finding a little bit more of that balance? I mean, we know it's never going to be perfect for any of us ever. But are you finding you've reached a little bit more of a stride with that?
I don't know if there is ever balance, right? You just manage it as it comes.
Mhm.
Like sometimes work takes priority. Sometimes your family takes, I mean, my family always takes priority, but
Right.
Your focus has to
Mhm.
change. And so I think if anyone is looking for a perfect balance, that doesn't really exist. But the difference for me now is that I I feel that stress has been eliminated. The stress of not the work, because the work is the work, right? Like
Mhm.
sometimes your workload is really high, sometimes it's less. But the stress of dealing with people and personalities and whether you're appreciated or if you're if someone's being honest with you or if there's something else, like not if you feel like you're in a place of trust, right?
Yeah.
That stress has been eliminated for me. And so I feel so much freer to put my energies into work or home or whatever
Mhm.
that may be, because my energy isn't sucked up with, being upset or depressed or managing people. And we're all going to have to manage people at some point, but
Yeah.
it's not the overriding thing. So I have a lot more energy to give, let's say.
Yeah. Well, and I do sense like a shift with you compared to last time, because I think last time you did touch on that you were like, well, you didn't relate it to your current role, so to speak, but you had a stress about you that it was clear that you were trying to make a point to do more separation so you could clear your own head and be like, I turn work off now, this is time for my family, and this is my dedicated time. I felt like you made a conscious effort to implement that.
I had to, because if the stress I was feeling from my job was taking over everything, and it was daily. And so I had to try to turn that off so that it didn't, affect the rest of my, it did ended up being that way. But I think the last time we talked, I was really trying to tiptoe around the real issue that I was having.
Yeah.
I didn't really talk about it.
No.
No. And now I feel a lot more freer to talk about it. It's like if you are in a bad situation, you have to get out. Life is
Yeah.
just too short. And a job is a job, right? So the best decision, and luckily I was able to find something and get out, but that's just misery. And you mentioned my yellow door. Last time we had our podcast, it was probably, muted out in the back because
Mhm.
my office was just, I called it the pit of despair because I was sitting here and it was dark and it was piled up with junk and I didn't care because that's how I felt inside.
Mhm.
And once I, got this fresh start, I said, like, this, I can't keep up with this. Everything's coming out and we're going fresh. And so I love being in my office now. I love it.
Well, yeah, I kind of want to go sit in your office.
Wonderful. Yeah. Amazing what, a little bit of paint will do, but it was really my mindset, that was the difference. And you gotta make your surroundings like it really affects you, I think.
It definitely does affect you. And then now, has it affected your health in a positive manner? Because we know that the other job had a negative effect on you.
Yes, it has because and I don't know if you noticed, like shortly after I started my new job, um, I was feeling more positive. I was feeling more like I had kind of laid down the shackles that were, holding me down, and I really now have to focus on my health. And so I was getting more into my physical fitness and all that stuff. But age still catches up with you.
That we can't get away from. But at
No.
least, we saw that you were going back on your bike and going out for bike rides. Have you been continuing to do that at the new place?
I did for the first 3 months, and then I haven't been back on my bike in a while. So yeah, consistency hasn't been great.
Well, sometimes it can be hard to get consistent. It takes a lot of repetitive behaviors for it to become very consistent.
It is, and especially, it's so easy to make the excuses. Like in the summertime here in Texas, I don't want to go outside and ride my bike. It's 108 degrees. So that's, convenient excuse. But that's what I appreciate about people like my husband who are just like, that's their thing. So they will go out and ride if it's freezing cold or it's, 105 degrees. He doesn't care. I wish I had that dedication and that would kind of keep me consistent, but not so consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a balance between it. I certainly would not be out there if it's 108 degrees. In fact, if I wake up and I'm like, oh, it hurts to bend down, I'm like, we're not going to lift weights today.
Yeah.
We're going to let those muscles rest till tomorrow.
I know. It's hard.
So tell us a little bit more about your current role. You touched on it, but and you explained you're in one of three areas. But can you expand on that a little bit more so we kind of get a better understanding of what it is that Helen does?
Yes. So my company is an outsourced manufacturer of medical devices. And there's three primary categories. One is related to cardiovascular devices, and the one that I support, and it's a mouthful, so let me make sure I get it right. After, I don't know, 10 months now, I'm still trying to get it right. Cardiac rhythm management and neuromodulation is the category that I support. So those are things like defibrillators, pacemakers, a lot of implantables, And then we have another category that's more related to batteries and niche markets. So kind of, different things. But my role, we have 10 attorneys, and we have global operations. So the 10 attorneys support all of that. So I support that category as kind of the de facto GC for that category. But I've recently also taken on litigation, which I'm very comfortable doing. I've done it, my whole career, so I enjoy doing that. And then some labor and employment, which also, as a generalist, you kind of have to know some basics and have to know enough to be dangerous and know enough to when to call the experts.
Yes.
But so yeah, I'm doing that now, and we have the other attorneys for the most part kind of do something similar to me, and then we have a few that are very specialized, like we have the patent attorneys, and then we have the corporate governance attorney.
So when I hear medical devices, and then I know it's an international company, I just think claims and a lot of the issues that you might see, not only having claims nationwide, but also being faced with litigation across the world, and the challenges that can bring to you.
Yeah, I'm still learning. I feel like, and I gave a talk somewhere about a month or so ago, and I told everyone I think I can still use the "but I'm new" excuse for just a couple more months. After a year, you can't really use that. But anyway, I'm still learning about kind of the operations of it, and I think because we're an outsourced manufacturer, and a lot of times, while we do help with development, it's a build to print, right? Like, so it's our customer's device, product, whatever it may be, and we help them manufacture it. So not a whole lot of, knock on wood, like products liability claims, because we just make it the way you tell us to make it, right?
Yeah.
And unless just the quality is bad or we didn't make it the way you told us to make it, I think we don't really see like the recalls and the liability issues as much. So that's good for us.
But it doesn't mean that you don't get brought in. It just means you have an easier way to get out.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. They do try to bring us in all kinds of, situations and litigation matters. They try to bring us in somehow, but it is easier.
I'm sure though you also have a lot of issues that arise out of contracts, because if you're manufacturing these products, and there's intellectual property associated with them, and there's contracts associated with them. Like, are you tend to be like, I don't know how else to say, but like the overseer to ensure that you're complying with the contracts and the intellectual property issues as your company is manufacture, or not manufacturing the product, but manufacturing the products, but they're not. It sounds like you're manufacturing the products that are designed by somebody else, but then there's probably a lot of compliance issues with that.
Yes, there are, and we have a whole compliance team that I'm not responsible for that manages all of that. And that's another thing I'm still learning, because there's FDA issues and there's compliance issues around the world, and patent issues in the US and other places. That is a whole thing. That's a big thing that at this point I'm luckily have not been able, have needed to dive into, because there's other experts that deal with it, and not me. So that's good.
So what do you find is one of the bigger challenges that you see on the day-to-day?
I think like many manufacturers, the issues we're facing right now, and it's just a global macro economic issue, is supply chain.
Mhm.
And that's affecting everyone. Like it's affecting everyone up and down, like our customers and their customers, and then our suppliers. So it's just hard all the way around. And once one kind of gets better, the other one goes, it's hard. So it's like whack-a-mole a little bit. But one part of it eases up and the other one gets worse. It is what it is right now. There's not a whole lot of control for anybody, I don't think, because you try to kind of send that down the chain and it doesn't really matter because everybody's dealing with it.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, everyone's doing their best to manage it, but it seems like past 3 years, it's one thing after another. If it's not COVID, it's a war or
I know.
other things. So
No.
that's the world. That's life.
Yeah.
Right?
Now it's like eggs that cost like $40 for like 2 dozen or something ridiculous or something.
Yeah. I was just talking to my husband today about that because we have chickens. We have chickens
Oh.
in the backyard. We have like 8 chickens. And so when they're laying, and right now they're not laying because it's winter and there's
This is
not a
what I
lot
heard.
of sunlight. Apparently that's what triggers them to lay. So like in the summertime, we have so many eggs. Right now we have no eggs from those girls and they're just basically freeloading. And last time we went to Costco and we got it was just 18 eggs and I forget what the cost was, but we were like astounded at how much it's gone up. It's doubled in price. And I said, can you just make those girls start laying now?
Yes.
And apparently there's a way you can. Like you can put lights in their, the coop and stuff to kind of get their body clocks going, but it's crazy.
I think you might need to start doing that. Like it's gonna help your bottom line. Because we were talking about it recently. She was actually our managing partner, Trisha. She also has chickens. And around Christmas time, I was going out to get, I needed eggs or something. And my husband was like, can you ask your boss? She's got it. And she lives down the street. I was like, you're right. I should. But I didn't know that in the winter, the chickens, don't lay eggs. Or very, very few.
Yeah, we would always have a surplus and we'd be giving them away. And now it's like we have to get store-bought eggs, which I hate. But yeah, and we have a whole flock of quail as well. So we have quail eggs, but they're not really laying right now either.
But what else do you got on that homestead of yours?
As far as animals, that's it.
So this is off topic though. Like, so what inspired you to go? I mean, chickens are pretty common, but quail, what inspired you to get quail?
This is all my husband. I have nothing to do with it at all, but he kind of likes to have this, we're nothing like a homestead. Honestly, we're in a suburb, but we have a little bit of a big yard in the back. So, he's looking for something that was easy to maintain, that like if he could, he would have a whole farm back there, like goats and rabbits and all this stuff. And I said, we're not doing rabbits. But he wanted to have something that we could have for meat as well as eggs. So this is his thing, is we're going to do quail. And then I don't really want to have anything to do with dispatching of quail to eat the quail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll eat the eggs, but that's about it. That's not my thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, quail also have eggs and they're quite large.
They are.
You can make quite the omelet with a quail egg.
Yeah, the quail eggs are fun. They're good. Oh, they have some different and better nutritional aspects to it, I guess. I mean, he's very into that stuff. I don't know.
What was this sparked during the pandemic? And I ask because during my husband was so inspired as well during the pandemic that, in addition to buying like 50 pounds of flour, he also had this thing that he wanted to start composting, and they went out and bought like 4,000 worms, and we had this whole like worm compost bin outside. But then it eventually becomes my responsibility. Like he's like, oh, we need to feed the worms. Like like I don't want to open the thing and look at them. Like I don't want to feed the worms. Like I want no part of it.
Go out there. Yeah, we have a big compost pile, and I have nothing to do with any of that. But no, it started way before the pandemic. We've had chickens for many, many years, and we grow vegetables and herbs and all of that. I don't know, not sure where it comes from. Maybe it's like a prepper thing, maybe not. I don't know.
Does your son go out and help him though? Because I do think that's a good thing for the kids to like do and know how to do and show interest in.
Oh, for sure. He has to go out and get the eggs every day in the summer. And he gives them all the table scraps. Chickens will eat everything and anything. So we don't have a whole lot of, either it goes in the compost bin pile or it goes to the chickens. So that's his job to go and do all of that.
Wow.
And my family, they've always had green thumb. My sister has this huge vegetable garden in her backyard, and she works for a nursery company here down in Texas. So she gets all the discounts and everything. But I don't know.
I don't have a green thumb at all.
Me neither. I can't even keep a house plant.
Although my family does make fun of me there because we have this bird feeder out back, and it was out of food for a while. I added food in it like last week. And I think it was Sunday morning. I just sat in our kitchen, like watching all the birds and commenting about them. And then I also added this other thing for the squirrels, hoping the squirrels wouldn't try to go in the feeder. I have this other thing with corn for the squirrels. And I was just watching and commenting on it. And my husband's like, hey, girls, mommy's turning into an old crazy lady. Talking about the birds and the squirrels in the backyard and what they're doing. But it is quite amazing. Like as soon as those birds figure out that there's a feeder there, it's like they communicate to all the birds and they all come.
Yes, they do. We have feeders. We've always had feeders, so we get all kinds of really pretty birds. Great. And why not? We live in town, so it's not like we get a whole lot of nature. So it's good. And it's good for, the kid to have to go do stuff.
Right.
Yes. It's always good to make the kids go do stuff.
Because I don't remember the last time I saw the chickens because I don't go out there. I don't go out there. That's their job, not my job.
Yeah.
I do other things.
I agree. Like last year, my husband's like, we need to get more worms. I'm like, we don't need to get more worms. If you would like to go get more worms, have at it. But I'm not dealing with those worms anymore.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm just happy that my husband decided against the bees.
Oh,
He
yeah.
wants to do bees. Yes. He just really wants to live on a ranch. I think that's what it comes down to is he wants to leave the city and live on a ranch somewhere.
I think he just really wants a beekeeper costume.
That's it. He wants to keep bees. He wants to have a goat. I mean, okay.
Well, aren't there? Isn't the thing with the goats that you don't need a lawnmower, and the goats will just eat your lawn?
But they'll eat everything too. And we like to try to grow vegetables, and it'll eat everything. I just can't get it. I can't go beyond chickens is my thing. That's about it. That's my level.
Well, I think I want an update in a few months to see what new animal ideas he may have. Because I don't think this is the end game for you. I think there's going to be more in your future.
Yeah, he's given up on rabbits for now, so we'll see.
Well, my kids have not given up on rabbits. They keep asking for rabbits. I haven't budged because again, we have fish, and I'm the only one who cleans the stupid fish tank. So who do you think's going to be cleaning the rabbit?
I just think it's hard. Like my son likes to name the chickens and the quail, and like, how are you going to eat that?
Right.
That animal that you just named, and it's even it's worse with like a bunny rabbit. I can't.
I know.
Yeah, this is my husband's sense of humor. He'll serve rabbit at Easter. And that's him.
And next year, here's Cottontail. We've had Cottontail for 2 years. Easter brunch. Cottontail with orange sauce. Anyway, let's see, we've totally digressed. But we are just about out of time. But I always ask this of everyone who comes on, but given where you are now and taking yourself back to where we were last time we talked about a year ago, is there any advice you'd give year ago, Helen, on when approaching your this job search with this highs and lows and everything that you were going through? Any advice that you would have given yourself?
Really find a way, no matter how hard it is, to manage your stress. Because especially when you hit 50 or over, or even in your late 40s, your health just you think you're invisible up until then, invincible until then, and then you realize, no, my age I'm getting older, and I can't handle physically the stress that I could when I was younger. And so whatever it may be, whether it's more exercise or whatever it is, you have to find a way to manage the stress, because I let it consume me. I was kind of wallowing in it for a while. And that doesn't, it's hard. It's kind of like being in depression. You can't just snap out of it. But that would be my greatest advice to myself, is you have to find some way to manage the stress. And it's just a mental thing. Like, you have to turn that off, because what happens with a lot of women, you start over analyzing and thinking about it, and just staying up at night, and just don't think about it. You have to kind of leave it alone, because it might take you 3 months to find that new job. It might take you 18 months. I, never thought it would take that long, because I had opportunities and interviews along the way, and I thought, surely one of these, and even if this isn't the one that I'm going to marry, at least it'll let me leave. But it just wasn't. And I think, like with everything, it happens for a reason. And I waited, and timing was right for this job. And I love my team. I love my boss. So it's great.
But I also think that's key too, though, is, even if you're looking for a change, you don't necessarily just want to take the first opportunity to change if it's not the right one, and you're just going to end up in the similar scenario again and looking again.
Yes.
Afford yourself some opportunity to be a little bit picky.
I felt that way. I felt like, I'm still employed, no matter how unhappy I am. Like you're saying, it's a different kind of stress. And I do have time to be picky. But as the time went on, I just started getting more and more desperate. Like, if it's halfway something that I would want to do, I will go and check it out, just because I have to leave a place that's not good for me, not good for my mental health. So, but it worked out the way it's supposed to work out, and I got it all.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a happy ending, really happy ending.
Well, and I'm so happy to hear that, and I truly hope it continues on that, that trajectory on the way up, and that it's a landing spot for you to, see out the rest of your career.
Well, next time I maybe you can invite some other folks, because I'm interested in talking about and learning other people's perspectives on this whole quiet quitting thing. I don't know if you've done that yet.
We have not talked about quiet quitting.
Yeah, and the quiet hiring. I mean, what is that? Is that a real thing?
Yeah, I'm interested to find out, but I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. How do you quiet quit? Do you just stop doing your job? I don't know.
Well, you stop doing the extras, you quiet quit by just doing what's required of you, and you quit doing, instead of billing 10 hours a day, you only bill the 8 hours that you have to bill and walk away. And it's that kind of mentality that they're talking about.
But
yeah, there's a lot of talk about that, and I think to myself quite frequently, I'm like, what does that even mean? And if I'm doing what's required of me, why is that quitting? Because I'm not, maybe this is the job that I'm happy with right now where I am, and I'm trying to do this job the best I can. But if you're not trying to get to that next level, if you're not trying to, get to the next promotion, does that mean you're quiet quitting? Because there's plenty of people that have been in their same job for 20, 25 years.
And they're happy.
Well, yeah, and they do it well. Why is that quitting? I don't really get it.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like more like setting boundaries.
Yeah.
So
and everybody's career has ebbs and flows, right?
Right.
Sometimes you have something that's new and interesting and you're really all in it. Sometimes it's just always kind of the same old mundane stuff. It's not always going to be like, I would hope you're not always chasing a carrot.
yeah,
That doesn't sound healthy to me.
no.
But it's how we're taught, right? And that's all law school is. It's, chase that carrot. The next step's partnership. The next step, equity, yeah.
And then after that, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of interested to hear, especially from women, how they feel about that. I think women have a different perspective on this quiet quitting thing.
Well, I'm going to take your advice. I already have an idea. So,
all right.
So stay tuned, everyone.
Yay.
Listening in. I have an idea. I have an additional guest to bring on for that already in the back of my mind. So thanks.
Great. You're welcome.
Well, Helen, it's always a pleasure talking to you, whether or not we're talking about work or chickens or, quiet quitting. I appreciate everything that we can chat about. And thanks so much for joining us again. And I hope to have you on again soon, now that you gave me a new idea. I love when guests give me ideas.
I always have a great time. Thanks so much, Megan. I love joining, and I look forward to hearing what you're going to do next.
Well, awesome. And for everyone who's listening, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to the Defense Never Rests on Apple Podcasts. You can also find us at TDNR at YouTube. Thank you.